Welcome, closers and contractors, to episode 12 of the Profits for Sanity podcast. I'm your host, Dominic Caminata, CEO of Grosso University, the industry-leading sales training group. In the world of business, we firmly believe that volume is for vanity and profit is for sanity. It's the mission of this podcast to bring on the brightest minds in the home improvement and home services industry that can educate you how to grow and scale a more profitable business. And today I'm absolutely honored to be joined by one of the most talented, hardworking, and well-spoken gentlemen in the business, and I don't say that lightly, Doug Wyatt. I had the honor of meeting Doug at a party in New York City hosted by Rilla Voice, and immediately knew that this was a man I needed to stay in contact with. Doug is a shining example of what you can achieve in life with hard work, passion, and perseverance. His journey, like many of the industry greats, has not necessarily been the easiest. Some would say that Doug spent some time in the school of hard knocks and has certainly overcome many trials and tribulations to become the well-rounded educator he is today. Doug has continued to grow year after year, and as of today is one of the most influential trainers and consultants in the home services industry. Doug is a certified instructor of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He has trained thousands of small businesses, and as a matter of fact, has personally helped grow 7,000 blue-collar tradesmen and educate them on how to sell with integrity. Doug has even put together training programs for massive corporations like GE to help their 3,000 representatives learn how to sell multi-million-dollar MRI machines with better communication. So needless to say, those of you watching this, please get your notepads out, get your popcorn ready, get focused, get ready to learn a ton of valuable information. Doug is certainly a mountain of wisdom. Doug talks about twice as much as the average person, which is fine because if you only hear half of what he's saying, you're still breaking even. Okay. All joking aside, we're definitely excited for this conversation. In this podcast, Doug is actually going to educate us on how to communicate without conflict. And we're going to be breaking down the 6 foundations of effective communication. And if we have time, even talk about how we can become better negotiators. That's a lot to squeeze into one episode, but we're going to do our best. So first of all, I just want to thank you so much, Doug, for flying all the way out here from Colorado, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Dom. What an honor it is to be here with you and the team at Grosso University, the things that you guys are doing in home improvement, home services for contractors. It's absolutely incredible. So truly an honor to be here.
And I'm honored to say that Doug's actually going to be speaking at one of my events now, the Agogi Growth and Profitability Summit, speaking on some of the various subjects we're going to be discussing in this podcast. So again, thank you so much.
I mentioned the meeting there that we had in New York City, and I believe everything happens for a reason. A lot of times people might think, oh, well, you guys are kind of doing the same thing. You're working in sales, leadership, you're trainers. I really look at that, and Sebastian shared with me, the owner of Rilla, said, man, there is a guy that's going to be at this party that you've got to meet. And of course, I get there, and there's this guy in this incredible red velvet vest. Yeah, we became fast friends, and here we are today in your studio, and you have me speaking at the Agogi. So we're very excited to be joining you there as well.
I'm kind of sad. Well, I'm obviously proud of what I've done recently, but I'm sad because, as some people may have known, I've been losing weight. I'm actually down about 55 pounds from when I saw you at that party. So that velvet suit, I have to get it retailored. It doesn't fit me anymore. So I can't bust it out until I get it retailored. But so again, you traveled all the way from Colorado. So thank you once again. And just kind of kick things off, people that maybe have never heard of Doug Wyatt before, tell us a little bit about your origin story. Sure. Some of the trials and tribulations maybe you experienced along the way, and then your entry into home services, because a lot of people that I interview here, and I'm certainly a person that can attest to this, I discovered this industry surely by accident. Wasn't part of my life plan. They didn't teach me about home improvements or home services in school.
Sure.
There's not really many college degrees that I'm aware of that really teach how you can thrive in this industry. So how did you discover this industry and ultimately become the legendary trainer you are today?
Yeah, well, in the introduction there, you'd kind of mentioned the School of Hard Knocks. So I think we should probably start way back, and I'll try to keep this condensed.
Way back in the Babylonian era.
That's right. Maybe not quite that far, although I do think I am quite a bit older than you, Dom, so I appreciate you pointing that out.
Rick Grosso used to always joke about that. He's like, I don't want to disclose my age, but my first sale was to a Babylonian. So
I love that. Yeah, and what an incredible man Rick Grosso was as well, and now you're carrying on the legacy here at the university. So I'm going to go way back to a little town in the Ozark Mountains. I grew up in southwest Missouri, kind of just north of the border of the Arkansas line there. And, I was in this small town, and this is really where my work ethic started to develop. My father would have my brother Chris and I up before the sunrise, and we would often work way after the sun went down. I baled so many bales of hay or bucktails of hay onto the back of truck beds. And I can tell you back in the day, it was about 3 cents a bale. And that was my first experience with performance-based pay. The harder you work and the better you get at something, the more that you earn. And I took a lot out of the country. One of those things being my work ethic, but also being a man of honor, character, and integrity. And I also knew I wanted more out of life. I didn't know what I was destined for, but I knew I was tired of being told we didn't have enough. And my parents worked incredibly hard and they supported us. We never went without food or anything like that. But my father reminded my brother and I that until he graduated the 8th grade, he lived on a one-room shack, dirt floor with an outhouse about 50 yards out from the front door. And he reminded us that no matter how bad we had it really good compared to him. Mm-hmm. But growing up there, we lived on 10 acres, so we didn't get a lot of solicitors, so to speak, a lot of door-to-door salespeople. But those that we did, my father didn't like salespeople. He didn't like sales. In fact, he was the kind of guy that, he would either slam the door on somebody or he'd invite somebody in that was, maybe selling a certain part of a religious sect. He'd invite them in and then, just do things to demoralize them, right? And so when I was in college, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was studying business, but I knew I was tired of being broke. And I woke up in the middle of the night one night and thought about this place that me and my buddies were ordering a lot of pizza from. Incredible pizza, a little kind of a ma and pa type place, right? And so I thought, what if I put a coupon book together and stapled that thing together and went out and started learning to teach myself how to sell door to door. And that's what I did. So I signed up my first little pizzeria, put a coupon book together. We had those coupon books printed back in the day. It was like Kinko's, FedEx Kinko's now. And I started knocking on doors, getting my teeth kicked in, learning from that school of hard knocks of rejection and interrupting people's dinners and people like telling you they're going to call the cops and all that. Yeah. Well, it took me about 6 months to start to think I'd figure some things out. And I wrote a 84-page training manual, and I had a buddy in college that was a DJ. So I put down my first audio training track. And because I'd grown up in a Baptist household, memorizing scripture and going to Sunday school, I put little superscripts on the script so that when I practice with the team that I ended up hiring, we would literally hit that thing word for word, line by line. And we'd say, oh, you missed something here, you messed up that there. And so that's where I really started to cut my teeth in sales. That opportunity, once I started getting some money in my pocket, I set up my schedule that next semester to be done with college courses by Wednesday afternoon. I started getting on airplanes and started going to see the greats. Wow. Because they were all on infomercials back in the day. And I was starting to see guys like Stephen Covey and Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins, Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Wayne Dyer. I'm talking about the greats back in the day, and I know we've all read those books. Speaking of books, the first book I ever read in regard to personal development, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, one of the all-time greats, right?
So it's funny when I do seminars, I often ask the audience, how many of you have read the book Think and Grow Rich? And with predictably, every rich person in the audience raises their hand.
Right.
I know those are the most successful people in the audience. It's definitely life-changing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have the same philosophy. Like I often talk to people, it's like, reading 10 books is good, but sometimes you got to read the right book 10 times, and that's more effective. Like really internalize it, really live it, let it really transform your life, and that's certainly a book that can do that.
It's one of the things that I refer to as going deep rather than wide, right? If we go deep into that book and you read that same book 10 times and really start to apply what's in that book, that's where transformation can start to take place rather than reading so many books and not implementing anything or very little. And so that really started to change my thinking. As a broke country redneck kid, all of a sudden going to see those greats and then starting to apply that. By the time I graduated college, I had over 500 kids working for me in 7 states. And so that just changed my life. And I wasn't the kind of guy at that time, where it was like, I needed to go buy an expensive car. I just kept reinvesting. I had a guy that I'd been doing some promotions for asked me if I wanted to open some restaurants. And in 1 year in Denver, Colorado, we opened 6 Papa Murphy's Take and Bake pizzerias and 3 Subways. So I got into the franchise business. I started learning real business, so to speak, point of sale systems, bounce back coupons, hiring over 40 kids in 1 Papa Murphy's because all the kids could only work 3 hours a couple nights a week, right? Mm-hmm. And then one day I got into home services, and this is really where the story starts to change and why we're sitting here today. On the golf course one day, my business partner got paired up with a guy that had started a heating and air conditioning company. And so before you know it, I'm investing $250,000 into a fledgling HVAC company. And all of a sudden, a few years later, in the worst year, the worst economy in 2009, we reached Inc. magazine status as one of the fastest growing privately held companies in America among all small business.
That's amazing.
In 2009, after the bubble had burst with the mortgage industry. So since then, that was 2006, I have been in the trades, have done a few other things along the way, and worked in some different industries, have an all-natural sleep aid that we've gotten into Walmart, Walgreens, and CVS. I just love business, and I absolutely love sales. Dom, I think you and I really relate on something, and that is that sales don't have to be about high pressure. They don't have to be about being pushy or sleazy or what I like to refer to as a snake in the grass, selling snake oil. What I like to say is that sales is about high service. It's not about high pressure. It's about serving more than selling.
Yeah.
And the better we get at serving, at sharing stories, at communicating our passion, and as you mentioned, communicating by keeping conflict down, then we have less resistance. And if we can keep conflict down, have less resistance, we'll have higher close rates, and we'll not walk out of there with a 1-star review saying, man, that was like inviting Dracula across the threshold. I couldn't get that guy or gal out of here. And I think that's one of the things that we really relate on, is that if we learn to serve others better in the way that we communicate and we sell our product with passion, that's where we're going to see the most success.
I love that you spoke on that. You know, obviously salespeople don't get the red carpet treatment very often on a sales encounter. So I think often when people go through trainings, it's kind of like this red carpet fairy tale version of what's going to happen when John and Mary answers the door, which rarely happens. And I think of like how the military trains, right? They train ideally on realistic situations, like what's going to happen in reality in the heat of battle, so I can execute the mission without allowing my disruptive emotions from preventing me from executing, right? Go long-headed into battle, but be prepared. And that's something that was really passionate for me as well when I'm training my reps. Not if, but when you walk up to a client's door and they try to cancel the appointment, how exactly are you going to respond to that so you're not tripping over your words? Right. When you walk into the house and immediately throw a curveball objection at you, right? How are you going to make sure you're not talking yourself out of the sales encounter in the first 3 seconds, which happens all the time?
Say something there, Dom?
Yep.
You mentioned the 3 seconds. It's really interesting, and it lends itself to me thinking that a lot of people watching your podcast, and you as well, when you're in door-to-door, you start to realize how important 1, 2, 3 seconds are. What I would share with the students that came to work with me back in college, and now we're talking about like 29 years ago now, I would say we're going to earn 3 seconds at a time. We're going to earn the next 10 seconds with the first 3. Yeah. We're not going to be worried about 3 minutes later or 5 minutes later, because if you don't master the first 3, the next 10, you're not going to get to the next 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or 5 minutes. There's no way you're getting a sale. And so now when we create more robust sales processes, whether that be 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 3 hours, whatever that might be, depending on the products that we're promoting, that we're influencing others to purchase from us, every second throughout the entire 3-hour process, whatever it might be, every second matters. Every story matters. Every word that we choose to share matters. Our body language, the words, the voice inflection, everything matters. And that's what I say, ultimate preparedness. And when I have somebody say, well, I don't want to work that hard, then I just say, well, hey, that doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a bad fit for me. It makes you a bad fit for my organization. And maybe some people would go, well, that's crazy. I just say, listen, if we're going to work 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 15 hours a day, if you're going to work 1 hour a day, what I say is, give me your best hour. Give me your best 8. Don't give me a half-assed effort for 4 of the 8. And that means that when it comes down to ultimate preparedness, it matters how we look, how do we dress, how do we smell? Is our beard trimmed? Do we look intentional? Everything has to be intentional. You don't have to be clean shaven, but that beard, if you're walking in on a sales lead, you better look intentional.
So when I first took over Grosso University, or the Grosso's legacy, right, he had a 10-step sales process, which really started at the door approach. And I saw a big need to add a step before then, because I'm a firm believer that if you fail to prepare, you're preparing to fail, right? So Ben Franklin quote.
I was going to say Ben Franklin.
So I added preparation. That's the only reason why we have an 11-step sales process, is I added preparation, and I created a sales acronym, because everyone has a sales acronym, so why not me? So it's sleep, affirmation, learn, exercise, sustenance, and it's just And of course, there's more things you can do, but it's just a basic framework for a sales rep each and every day. If you do these things each and every day and you take them seriously, it's going to give you the right momentum and the right state, the right confidence, the right mindset. So when you go knock on that front door, again, they're making judgment on you within seconds, as you said, right?
Yes.
I want to make sure I have that masterful first impression, that I'm going in the right direction. And one thing that I used to preach to myself, this is one of my, visualizations before I knocked on the door in my car, is before I go knock on that door, I would always tell myself, I'm going to give these homeowners the best presentation they've ever seen in their life, and I'm going to make them feel like the most important people in the world for the next 2 hours.
That's right.
And I did that because I wanted to get in the right state, because we talk about how life's a self-fulfilling prophecy, where every thought you have releases a chemical that literally changes your physiology and your outward appearance towards others, right? Yes. So if I have stinking thinking when I'm walking up to the door, dragging my feet, praying to the Lord above that this is a no-show or something like that, because I am hungover from the day prior,
right,
then that's going to have a negative influence on my outward appearance towards others, which gives them negative thoughts and beliefs about me as a trusted advisor to take care of them, and more often that gives me a negative result in return, which continues to fuel that negativity. So when you talk about the 67,000 negative thoughts that people have, and every one of those is releasing a negative, acidic, toxic chemical, it's literally killing you, to be honest. Biologically, it's destroying you inside out. We got to be deliberate about what we're programming into our minds positively. This is not something that's going to happen on its own, especially with the world we live in.
Right.
We got negativity all around us. We got to be deliberate. So what are some of the things that you have found that you worked for you and the salespeople that you've trained to be deliberate about positive thoughts, feelings, emotions before I knock on that door? What are some things that work for you?
Yeah, and one of the things I think we're going to talk about today is the 6 foundations that we've developed at Synergy to talk about how do we reduce conflict, right, in order to work towards that situation where we're closing the sale, doing it in a high service way. The first thing is we're going to talk about, we're going to have to get our mind right. I call these the ground rules, and there's a couple of things within the ground rules. And the first thing is that we've got to think about what we think about, right? It's about the mindset, but it's also going to be about what you talked about when you said, how do we show up at that door? We're already fighting an uphill battle, right? So we've got to be prepared, ultimately prepared for all of that. So when I think about how do we get prepared, number one, what are you putting in your mind? I'm not a big fan of television these days. I don't watch a lot of television myself. I encourage people, hey, we've all got to have a little bit of downtime, right? We've got to have some balance in our life. But what I find is that many people are making the excuse that I need balance or I have to have balance, and they've already got way too much balance. I'll tell you where that balance is. They're waking up in the morning and they're scrolling on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook for an hour. Well, there's an hour right there, right? They're in their car and they're listening to Tay-Tay, right? Or whatever. I don't know. But they're listening to music. Maybe it's Metallica, maybe it's Taylor Swift. I don't know what it is, but that time, I call that drive time university, right? And I'm the first person that coined that term. But every time we have a little bit of downtime, we have an opportunity to be working on those thoughts. And the time we wake up, especially if it's a work day, what are we doing? I call it drive time university, shower time university. First foundation of getting our mind right and the thoughts that we're thinking, and then that's going to translate into the way that we speak and then the way that we close. The success that we'll have.
Yeah, if you want to hide the secrets of the world, just put it in a library, right? So no one's going to find it there.
That's right.
You talk about Drive Time University. I just said you got to turn your car into your mobile library. You're going to spend about 5 to 6 years of your life looking at that windshield. And what are you going to be doing with the information? It's either going to be something that's going to springboard you forward. And very much for me, that's why I excelled so quickly. I was obsessed with learning the Grosso system. I often share that my first 7 leads in a row, not having a clue what the hell I was even doing, I was able to walk out with a sale. So my belief in the process was off the charts. But then I started quantifying if I could do that each week, each month, all year long, what that looked like. Immediately I was addicted. I couldn't think of anything else to listen to but Rick Grosso, his Yes, I Am a Closer. I think it was on an 8-track at the time. Yes, I Am a Closer, Ready, Aim, Goal. I just poured my heart and soul into that, and I memorized it and mastered it very quickly. And I'm a slow learner. So I always joke about it. I was in the 50% of my class. I made the top 50% possible. I was very much a slow learner. But the thing is, I realized if I have a genuine passion for it, though, and kind of like you, I know you talk about hard work and talent can sometimes lose to hustle when talent doesn't hustle. I'm very much, I'll work, similar to you, work ethic.
Yep.
So that's essentially what I did, turn my car into my mobile library, and it changed my life. And this is what, obviously, I encourage salespeople to do. And I like when you talk about the kind of like three foundational elements of sales. You talk about sales being a transference of feeling, obviously establishing or building or earning trust, and then of course reducing the amount of risk that someone has going into an investment. It's a big investment. In some cases, an entire year's salary they're investing right on the spot. Can you speak to those three pillars real quick and, again, how this all kind of ties in together?
Well, I love that you brought that up, Dom. And I look at these, you kind of mentioned the three. I believe that sales is really three things. And there's a lot of things that fit within this umbrella. But first, sales is transference of emotion, right? It's that feeling. And I hear you talk about this a lot. You're sharing this with your audiences, and I absolutely believe this. In fact, I think you said that you closed your first 7 not knowing what the heck you were doing. The reason that you could go in there and do that in the beginning is because you were coming from a place of authenticity, right? You didn't even know what you didn't know, and you didn't know what all the other competitors were doing. You didn't know what you should have been worried about, right? What the other bids were going to be and the other prices were going to be. You went in there passionate because you only knew one thing, your product, and you knew that you were going to go in there and tell the truth, right? And so that passion, it just, it was like something that invigorated you, and it was contagious with those first 7 customers. And then what happens is salespeople, we start to learn a lot more, right? And then we start to get concerned about what they're going to think about what we're saying or what our competitors are doing, where they're priced. So I do believe that first pillar, we've got to be passionate about what we do. So it's a transference of emotion when we're passionate, and that is contagious.
I love that you said authenticity, and I'm sure you get into this, like the frequency of emotion. Some people claim that the most powerful emotion that we can possibly transmit in terms of frequency is authenticity. Yeah. It's almost like human beings are built with built-in BS detectors, and they're built to really gravitate to people that are being true to themselves or being an authentic version of themselves. Right. So if you're going in there and putting on an act and just trying to smooth talk your way into it, saying, what you think they need to hear, but it's not genuine, authentic to you, they can see through that very easily.
Absolutely. And when I think about authenticity, I think about what emotion is that creating when we're at the table or we're in a process, even on the phone. And, we can talk about the vibrational state. I mean, literally those things travel throughout the universe. I don't want to go too far down that today. Yeah. But if you're smiling on the phone, people can hear it. It's part of our human existence that we can tell. So the other two parts of that, sales is a transference of emotion, but then also an increasing of risk or trust, right? When risk goes up, trust goes down. When trust goes up, risk goes down. So if you're communicating from a passionate standpoint with authenticity, then trust is going up. And just like you said, if they sense that you're not being authentic, then risk is going up and trust is going down. This goes into our second foundation of effective communication to keep conflict in a closing sequence or a sales process down. I call this the wordsmith, right? Really thinking about the words that we choose to share, because the words we choose to share do matter. I'll just take this one. Since we're in sales, let's take the word price. Yeah. But there's about 6 words that really fit with the word price. Price, cost, fee, charge, spend, pay. All 6 of those words are incredibly dirty words.
Big turnoff.
They're dirty words of anti-persuasion. You're not only not persuading somebody to choose you, you're persuading them not to choose you. You're persuading them to tell you they got to think about it, talk to their spouse about it, talk to their brother about it, talk to the neighbor, the handyman about it, right? What are we truly talking about? We're talking about making an investment. So if we're talking about a home improvement project, we're talking about new wood floors or a new roof or a new kitchen or a new bath. We're going to make an investment in our home. We're making an investment in our family. We're making an investment in that project. So I'm never going to say the price of this or the cost of that, the fee of this or the charge here, because those are all negative. And I'm not going to say it's going to require you to spend or require you to pay. I'm going to say, Dom, the investment for this solution in your home is going to be an investment of this amount. And I'm going to state that amount after I use the word investment. And the reason I like investment is I don't believe there's a way that an investment is used in a negative way. Right. We are taught from the time we are children to invest in ourselves, invest in the stock market, invest in real estate, invest in our family, invest in a home, invest. It's always a good thing. And never is the price, cost, fee, charge, spend, or pay a good thing. So I like to say there in the Wordsmith program that the words we choose to share matter. We've developed hundreds of these that can really help people in the world of influence and sales to have better results simply by what I'd call changing out a few words or wordsmithing them.
So I had a lot of success training people that came from the finance department at car dealerships, right? And of course, those are typically the better closers, the true closers in the car dealership. But conditioning the word payment out of their vocabulary was definitely a daunting task. And I said, in a car, it makes sense, right? Because they drive it off the lot, it depreciates 20%, and it's going to depreciate every second they drive that thing down the road. Yeah. You're making a payment on a depreciating asset. That makes sense. So in what we do, we're adding value to their home, something that in a lot of cases can appreciate in value over time, depending on how long you stand behind it. So then I'm like, how many of you like payments on something that depreciates? No?
None of us.
How many like a monthly investment or a total investment on something that gives you a return, right?
Absolutely.
Everybody likes to have a return on an investment. Yep. So that's, we're not selling a depreciating asset, so you don't have any need at all to use the word payment ever when we're referring to our products and services.
And I agree with that. And I don't want to name this guy by name, but we would all know him, and you might want to have him on your show. Maybe you don't. But his initials are DR, and he's written numerous books. And all of our homeowners, you can say the name if you want. It's your
Dave
show.
Ramsey?
Yeah. Listen, I'm not going to say that if anybody watching this is on a set wage, that maybe they shouldn't think about paying off their house note and their credit cards and their cars. However, I prefer to take an abundance mentality. And I've never been the guy that's like, oh, well, I got to worry about clipping coupons to go. I'm just always been the guy that's like, I'm going to have an abundance mentality versus scarcity. And I'm going to go out there and figure out how I can earn more income so that I don't have to spend my Sunday afternoon clipping coupons to save 50 cents on something at the grocery store. But Dave Ramsey is in the hearts and minds of many of our consumers in those homes, and they are clipping coupons. They are trying to pay off credit card debt. They are trying to pay off their home and their cars. And if we walk in there talking about a monthly payment, we're selling against ourselves. We're creating the opportunity for that homeowner, even if they don't consciously know what's happening to them, they're going to get that gut feeling. They're going to get that feeling that maybe I shouldn't move forward.
One thing I like commonly preaching and teaching to salespeople, if you want to make twice as much money, be twice successful in this profession, it doesn't mean you have to work twice as many hours or drive twice as far. What it means is you have to get a little bit better at all the critical areas of selling, because all these things do compound. And sometimes the smallest little tweaks you make in a sales rep's vocabulary, their communication, can literally turn them around and get them to take off like a rocket ship. And one story that I like referring back to, I had the sales rep that was really good. I had a good start, but then hit a wall. I was wondering why every time he delivered the buy today or the initial visit reward or the PSA, whatever you want to call it, the incentive to move forward, he was getting resistance. He was getting hit with objections, sometimes getting people accusing him of being high pressure. Their guard was going up. You could tell just the way he was communicating was not landing properly. So I rode along with the sales rep and I recorded, this is before Rilla and all these cool gadgets we have, but I just recorded the audio of that on my phone because I wanted to hear, but also get him to hear it later if there was anything that stood out. And he ended his vignette was, here's the deal, we have to get this thing done while we're here today. And that was like nails on a chalkboard for me listening to that. Here's the deal. It's almost like he's threatening the homeowner. We have to get this thing done while we're here today. Well, what does that trigger? Like today only, used car sales gimmick, right? High pressure. Yep. So I said, here's what I want you to do. Instead of saying, here's the deal, we got to get this thing done today. Say, if we're able to earn your business while we're here, keep us from making the trip back out. Just change it to that and see what happens. And he just changed the way he delivered. He's saying the same thing. If we're able to earn your business while we're here, keep us from making the trip back out. All of a sudden his sales just went through the roof just because of that little tweak in his delivery. And like you said, there's hundreds of examples of that, but it's something that people need to take very seriously is really fine tuning their communication. But this is what I see in the industry. You can tell me if you see the same thing, where a sales rep will work pretty hard learning a system. They'll learn the scripts. Then they'll go out there and have reasonable levels of success. Then they take the training book, throw it in the garbage. It's like, I got it. I know all the answers. And we know the brain's a bucket with the hole in the bottom, right? So, and then all of a sudden the bad habits form. They start forgetting things. They start getting, letting the customer influence the direction of the sales process. Why do you think salespeople do that? They just stop studying. And I guess, what advice would you give to the sales warrior watching this?
So what I would recommend to the sales warriors watching this is no matter how good you are, you're going to lose it. Just like if you win Mr. Olympia one day, Dom, you will start to lose that the day or the week that you stop training, that you stop practicing. So I'm going to recommend that we block time every single day, not just on weekdays, not just on work days, because every day is an opportunity for us to get a little bit better. It also allows folks like you and I that do feel like we're pretty well read and studied and that we've really started to work towards mastery on some of these things to never end up in that place of egotism or narcissism where we think that we know. And you know what I find every day when I do an hour of personal development minimum, usually it's more than that, right? Because if I get on a plane, I've got fly time university, drive time university, bag time university, waiting for my bags, I got the earbuds in, right? And so every time I'm listening to somebody else, I'm learning. Now, sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I knew that. And then I hear a little bit of a spin on something. I'm like, wow. Now, if I hadn't been listening and thought that I knew it all, then I wouldn't have been getting better.
As you were talking, I was thinking about the advice my mom always used to give me. I don't know if you heard this before on some of the interviews you've watched, but this is something that my mom taught me since I was a little kid, and I carry this with me my whole life. And to some people, this may not seem like the most inspirational thing, but for me, because my mom taught me this at an early age, it just stuck with me and I applied it. The first thing was, first of all, no matter how bad you think it is, just remember worse things happen to better people every day. So don't feel sorry for yourself. Count your blessings, be grateful. Okay, so that was the first thing.
Thank you for sharing that with me. Your mom was a wise soul.
And then she also, because I was very competitive and an athlete, she said, Dominic, I just want to let you know, no matter how good you think you are, just remember there's always somebody better. And that may not seem like the most inspirational thing, but for me, what I translated that is don't get complacent, don't get comfortable. Always try to improve yourself, get better. And this is why you're talking about investing in yourself. If you're going to have the ability to share love and passion and wisdom with anybody else, you got to love yourself first. You got to invest in yourself first. So, but those are two things my mom always instilled in me. I think about that every day. I think about that often.
Around, Dom?
Yes, she is. Yep, she lives in Jefferson. Hi, Mom.
Yeah.
I would love her name's Veronica. Yeah,
I would love to meet Veronica sometime. I mean,
I'm a total mama's boy.
Listen, not to be too sentimental here, but as you shared that story, the vibrational state in the room, I could see it shift, and it's like that love, that compassion, but also that I don't know, just that respect for what your mother instilled in you. Sometimes we need people to share some tough love with us, right? And a lot of times I see in our world today, in this day and age, we're in the day and age of, everybody gets a trophy. That's not me, right? And I can tell that's not you. Everybody shouldn't get a trophy. That is not life. And all of a sudden we have these kids where everybody's getting a trophy. Your mother gave you tough love. I'm sure there was also some really, a different thing that she would share with you, but sharing with you that there's somebody always better, instead of being the mom that said, Dom, you're the greatest.
Yeah, exactly.
Dominic, nobody's better than you, and you deserve that, and you should be getting, all the playing time, or you're the best wrestler. I don't know why the coach didn't have you playing, you in that match, whatever it might be. My parents were very similar and instilled those things in me. My parents were the kind of people that would say, I better never, and I mean never, hear you complain about a referee, right? I better never hear you say they were out to get you or it's the ref's fault. We're going to focus on what we can control, not what we cannot, okay? I always think back to my childhood, and I just think about I was never allowed to have an excuse for anything. And sometimes people would go, man, that was pretty rough, or man, I can't believe how hard your dad was on you. And I'm like, man, that developed thick skin, right? The thick skin that when I went into business and when I first started going door to door and all of that rejection, I was prepared for it, right? I didn't know what it was preparing me for at the time, and I didn't like it at the time. But when I look at how easily other people are deterred and they're taken off track, I think you and I were very fortunate to have parents that maybe didn't build us up more than they should have, and they shared with us that you better work your butt off, right?
Yeah, my dad always preached. He's like, can't means I don't want to. So I always thought about that. If I had these thoughts creeping in my mind saying I can't do this, then that's translate, well, that means I don't want it bad enough. It's like, how bad do you want it? Because if you want it bad enough, you can do whatever, you apply your mind to. So,
I don't want this podcast to come across as win at all cost, because that's definitely not what I am. When I talk about ultimate preparedness and scripting things out, I'm not trying to put guys in a straitjacket like, you have to say it this way. What I'm saying is, a lot of times for those that haven't invested the time to become ultimately prepared, I shared with my daughter, I said, listen, hustle, work ethic is what matters the most to me. Winning isn't everything. Wanting to is. And I will be the most proud father on planet Earth, the proudest father, if every day when you step across those lines and you play on that court, when you take the hardwood, you play like it's your very last game ever. Every play, every time when you're on that floor, play your hardest. And I don't care if you win or lose.
I did want to talk about something that I heard you talk about on another podcast, the grandmother rule, and the difference between being a master of persuasion or a master manipulator.
Yeah.
So what is the grandmother rule, and what is the difference? Because this is something I wholeheartedly agree, and this is why, the way we train, there's a lot of synergy with that
Right.
as well.
I think a lot of this has to do with what we were just chatting about, Dom, with your mother, right? Because now we're going to talk about the grandmother rule. And right on the heels of us talking about being premium priced. Because I think there's sometimes people will look at guys like us saying this, and I'm wearing a sport coat and you got on a nice collared shirt. And they go, I don't want to be a sleazy sales guy just overcharging. And that's not what we're talking about at all. What we're talking about is running a business with margins so that we can take care of our people and take care of our customers and be around for the long haul.
You know what Rick always said about that? He's like, it's not the thief in the industry that bothers me, it's the honest idiot. And he said, no offense, but it's the contractor that's maybe they're a good person, they have the right intentions, but they're falling into this trap of the race to the bottom and literally bidding jobs for costs. They literally go into the customer's house and they say, our prices are so low, we lose money in every job, and they're telling the truth.
Yeah.
Those are the people you need to be the most concerned about, but you can't associate yourself with those people at all because they're not even the same league. And then focus on what is the benefit to the homeowner, the prospects, that we are financially stable. Let's talk about that alone. How many companies go out of business in this industry? Why are they going out of business? Why are they living paycheck to paycheck?
In the home services industry, and I'll get back to the grandmother rule question that you asked me. In the home services industry, the national average is 2.5% to 3% net income. That means that on $100,000, you're talking about pennies, right? 3 cents out of $1 is the net profit. So you're talking about $3,000 out of $100,000. You're talking about $30,000 out of $1 million. You're talking about running a $5 million business to have $150,000 left over.
Yeah.
It's not enough. The way that we get there is, as you mentioned, a lot of companies are going out of business. And you talked about we lose money on every job. And I'll finish that as a joke that I like to share. How do we do it? We make it up on volume. We put more trucks on the road, right?
Well, that I think is interesting. And, I love the, QR Top 500 rankings. I know a lot of companies get a lot of pride when their name hits the list. But one category they never talk about is what is the bottom line net profit at the end of the day? So it's cool you're doing 100 million. That's really impressive. But ultimately, if I'm at 1% net profit or 2%, what am I really achieving?
Yeah, and one job goes wrong, right?
Yeah,
one guy blows through a stop sign.
Or a recession hits, or something happens with lending. Lending shuts down or gets more strict. They tighten the grips, and all of a sudden, your whole company is literally could implode on itself overnight.
You're on such razor thin margins, and it all looks good on the outside, especially for the for the influencers and the sales professionals watching this, that maybe they're on the sales side and they're running leads, but they're not seeing all the back end. I would open the balance statements, the P&Ls, and I would show that to the team because it looks really good when you've got 50 or 100 trucks on the road and all of them have beautiful wraps and you're in this big building, you got this call center and software and iPads and all these things, right? And then you open the books and you go, we've got $180,000 payroll this week or whatever it might be. And they start to realize, wow, if I drop 10%, let's just say that there's a company with a 3% net and somebody gives a 10% drop. That means that company lost 7% on that job alone, right? And so that's why we get into this thing with volume. And I'll tell you this, let's talk about Walmart and mass retail here really quick. I think that many business owners, and you mentioned the race to the bottom, I think we're tricked into this because we see Walmart saying, okay, we're going to compete on being the low price. The difference between the contractor and Walmart is that Walmart has millions and millions of people walking through those doors every single day, and they can afford to make a few pennies on some product on those shelves. They can afford to do that. Why? Because of the millions and millions of customers that are coming in there every single day.
They can also bank on that profit. A contractor can never bank on what is the actual net profit going to be at the end of the day after all expenses, the job's installed, was there any setbacks, did we run into a problem, unforeseen challenges that made this job upside down in profit? It's not like a commodity or something you can just buy that has a fixed price, a fixed net profit, and then you can bank on that every time.
That's right.
So
I agree with you, and I agree with Rick Grosso. Our competitors and our people that are bringing us the big challenges are not the big companies, not the premium price. I love those companies, right? I love the ones that are out there, yes, with a premium price, but delivering premium service and taking care of their people. I'm not talking about ripping people off, and that's the grandmother rule. The grandmother rule is that we should never recommend something to somebody that we would not recommend to our very own grandmother. Mm-hmm. And Dom, I'm not talking about some old nasty grandmother that's rude and stinks and, that is really just a terrible one, like throw mama from the train, right? Yeah. I'm talking about your grandma that you love dearly. Yeah. And I'm not talking about making a decision financially for her. I'm saying is this product going to provide the value that we know that it will? It's not our job to choose for people how they're going to invest their hard-earned money. I feel like it's our responsibility as salespeople to share all of the options, to make a recommendation based on our knowledge of the industry, right? And then leave it up to the person, but certainly influence them to the decision that we believe is best for them as our very own grandmother. Not the one necessarily that's going to put the most commission in our pocket. What I'm talking about with the grandmother rule is only recommending products and services to our customer base, just like we would our own family members that we love and cherish dearly, that we would take up arms for. So that's one of the foundations too. That goes within the foundation of the first one. The ground rules are, we're never gonna lie, cheat, or steal. We're gonna treat people and present to people like our very own grandmother, but at the same time, we're not gonna sell out of our own pocket. Meaning, if we go in there knowing how much the wood cost or the shingles cost or the furnace cost or the windows cost, and then we go in there saying, well, we would still be profitable if this. No. When we go to work and we accept responsibility and we put somebody's logo on, we wear it like a badge of honor, and if we accept responsibility to sell that product for that business owner, it's now also our responsibility to sell at their margin, not to feel like we're priced too high, not to drop our price. Our responsibility is to put the things in our mind, to go to the training, to study, to get up early, to stay up late, to work on the weekends, working on ourselves so that we run that sales lead on Monday morning or Monday night or Saturday night, that we are ultimately prepared to bring that business back to that business that we're repping their logo. That's our responsibility as salespeople. That, nothing else, right? And if we're the kind of person that's going to go to the business owner every day, I just share with that person, hey, maybe this isn't the right fit for you. Maybe you need to go work for somebody that is half our price. If that's what you feel, but if you're here, you've accepted responsibility to sell and to promote and to share our products and our prices and walk back in with that deal, right? So I think the grandmother rule, ultimately, we've got to keep that on our mind every single day. No lying, no cheating, no stealing, no selling to make just the commission. A commission is an afterthought. The commission is a reward for us serving customers better, not for selling them things that they don't need.
So when I was training my salespeople, I would commonly ask this question, and they often were not sure how to answer it, right? I would say, let's say that you did such an amazing job in your master presentation. You slid over the total investment. Let's say it's for a walk-in shower. We did a lot of walk-in showers. Okay. Let's say it's full retail. You haven't discounted at all. And the homeowner says, can I write you a check? Does the homeowner win in that situation? So I'd ask him that question. Do they win? And the salespeople are like, I'm not sure. No. I'm like, why not? They're like, well, because I could have gave it to him for a better price. I'm like, okay, how much commission would you make on a $20,000 sale, roughly? Let's just say $2,000, right?
Yeah, 10%.
How long does it take you to spend $2,000?
A few seconds.
Could you even tell me what the hell you spent it on? Maybe a fun weekend out with the guys. You buy some groceries nowadays. You go to Costco one time,
Great
right?
point. Yeah.
However, what does that homeowner have for the rest of their life? They have a shower that's going to improve their safety, their personal enjoyment, something they get to start their morning off, like literally living like a life of luxury, something you give them their independence back, their freedom to bathe themselves independently, right?
Yeah.
So they have something that every day is going to transform their life. You got a little paycheck. So who really got the better end of the bargain in that situation? Was it your little commission that you spent in 2 seconds, or the lifetime of personal enjoyment that homeowner got from your product, service, or solution?
That's right.
So with that in mind, when you're at the negotiating table, your number one most important mission in life is to turn in the most profitable sale you can for yourself, for your company, and for your team. Period. End of story. It's not how many discounts can I throw at this person until they roll over and buy. You're not doing anybody a service.
That's right.
And this is the number one reason why companies are so financially unstable and go out of business, because people are projecting their own personal thoughts, feelings, and beliefs onto the prospect. You got to leave that stuff in your car. It'll be waiting for you when you get back. When you're in the home, you got to understand, you got to believe, as you said, I got to believe in myself, my company, my product, my price. I got to believe in it. That's even though we don't say price, you still got to believe in it. And you got to slide it over knowing that you are delivering the best overall value to that homeowner. You're going to change their life and stand behind it, right? You're not going to leave the door open for some amateur chuck in a truck that doesn't give a flying darn to come in afterwards and screw them over, right? So you got to feel good about, you know, if you sell the deal profitably, you are doing a good service for your customer. You're obviously allowing your company to keep the lights on.
I believe there's about 70% of the marketplace that will pay us for our premium value. The crazy thing is, They all look and sound the same. It doesn't matter if they're living in $1 million mansion on the hill. It doesn't matter what the house looks like. Doesn't matter if their screen's torn or the porch is falling off, right? People are going to invest their money on the things that they decide, but they're all going to seem like they're saying the same things until the very end. If we start to prejudge or make predeterminations based on what they said on the phone or what they said when they opened the door or what they said during their presentation, we're only hurting ourselves. We've got to be able to work our process all the way down to the end. So when we get to the end, the homeowner, in my estimation, is still going to say the same things every single time. The difference is, if you can imagine, we have a circle here. There's a third, and a third. The first third is the value customer, right? That's the person that, if shown the value and how it benefits them, they will invest at a premium price point with us. Then there's the customer that's the cheap, and that's about a third of the market that I believe, doesn't matter what we say, they'll put their family at risk. They will go cheap. They'll buy the materials. They'll come in and help us do the job to save a few bucks on the labor, right? There's that customer, and that's the cheap customer. That's not my target, and that's not who we're training people to target, right? And then there's the other third, and I look at this like a pendulum, right? So if we got a third that's value and a third that's cheap, then there's a pendulum. Out in society today, I think there's another third that could go either way. Yeah. Sometimes they'll buy something cheap. This is me. It doesn't have to do with how much money they have in the bank or how much they earn. When I take a trip down to Mexico, I'm gonna go to Walmart and I'm gonna get a couple of sandals, usually about 3 pairs. Now, if those sandals float away while I'm out enjoying some ocean waves and somebody needed those sandals more than I did, I'm out a few bucks, right? No Those worries. Are the and ones. But there's other times where I will buy something really, really nice, right? So I'm one of those people that could go either way, but somebody's gonna have to show me the value and how it benefits me and how it fits into my life. So I would say, listen, when we're on the phone, when we're in the home, when we're presenting, we've got to be able to go all the way down to the end and present, just like you mentioned the person that was getting down to the end and said something like, I'm going to paraphrase, these deals won't last long, right? Yeah. And so when we're doing that, it's almost like a fight, a deal, right? So what I would say is, when we get down to the end, we better expect those objections to come up, right? Price, bids, brands, got to think about it, got to talk to the spouse, your price is too high. We've got to be masters at building back our value. And we can also talk about a sequence that I've developed called the rare listening sequence, where I like to breathe life into an objection so that it doesn't feel like a fight. Yeah. As soon as somebody starts to express their concern, we listen to them, make sure that we uncover the real challenge that they're having, but we also just have to go into every lead expecting that somebody's going to hit us with a price objection, tell us they've got other people coming, saying that we're the first one in, saying all those things. We've got to be prepared for that, but we also had to build our way to that every step of the way. If we will do that and then have the courage, the fortitude at the end to stay in the game and start to walk people through those concerns, I think we'll find a lot more success in our lives.
Hey closers, it's Dan Coombsbury from Grosso University. I'm the sales trainer who runs our monthly Sales Academy Masterclass, where we walk you through our 11-step process for in-home sales in the home improvement industry. This process is perfect for salespeople of any level of experience, whether you're green coming right into the field or you've been doing this for 30 years. We promise you that you're going to learn something that you can take out that day and help you close business. From my personal experience, I know that many homeowners that you talk to are looking to work with a credible expert who is knowledgeable, but they don't like being sold. The beautiful part about this process is it can be tailored for any personality type, any problem you may run into, and we're going to go through this in such a detail-oriented manner that you'll be prepared for any situation. From walking up and knocking on the door all the way through buttoning up the deal, we will teach you the nuanced art form that is one call closing. This is a skill set that helped me make multiple 6-figure income for years and years, and now, because I get to sit on this side of the camera, I get to pass that skill set along to you. I hope you're up to the task, because I'll tell you, this is a 145-page book that we train over a 2-week span. It is coupled with our 11-part video series that's broken down so it's easy to digest. No matter what type of learner you are, we accommodate you. Now, at the end of our 2-week training process, you will have to pass a final exam, and it's not easy. You'll have to score at least an 85% on this final exam in order to become a certified sales warrior through the Grosso University program. And that's where the hard work begins. But if you're up to the task and you want to make life-changing money and cultivate a skill set that will permeate into all areas of your life, I invite you to join me in the Sales Academy Masterclass. We have classes that start on the second Monday of every month, and I look forward to seeing you in class. And as always here at Grosso University, yes, you are a closer.
So obviously amazing content so far. I just kind of want to recap where we've traveled to, because we started off this podcast, we're going to be talking about really like the 6 rules of high-level communication, right? How to be an effective communicator. Ground rules, getting a lot into mindset, obviously getting the preparation so you can prepare to be a sales warrior. We talk about being a shining star, not a shooting star. So that's one of the foundational things to be a shining star in the industry. Then you talked about being a wordsmith. Obviously, the words that you choose matter. Even though we know words are a small percentage of communication, they still matter and they make all the difference, because the little things make all the difference. And now we're going on to an acronym you created, becoming a rare listener. Okay? Yeah. So break this acronym down, and obviously we can talk about why that's so important. And as we know, more data is coming out more than ever before on why listening is so essential in sales, and a lot of salespeople struggle at it. But yeah, break this acronym down.
Yeah, and thanks for doing that recap there, Dom. And I will just say also, so that we're clear, because you and I have been chatting about a lot of different things here today. Within the ground rules, that is the mindset, right? And how we get prepared. But also within that is what you brought up with the grandmother rule. Yeah, we're going to have the mindset. Yeah, our job is to be influencers. Yes, our job is to bring the sale back to that business that we're working for and repping that logo for. But it's also to be a good person, to be authentic, to be a man of character or a woman of character, to take personal responsibility for our appearance, for what comes out of our mouth and all those things, and to live by that grandmother rule that we're never going to recommend something to somebody just for sake of the commission, but that should truly benefit them. And then, as you mentioned, the wordsmith. The words we choose to share do matter, and we'll talk about in step 6 what I call the EKG method of performance, where we really start to talk about cadence and voice inflection and body language and all of those things. But the words we share matter, and we identified only a few of them. And you can imagine if you have hundreds of those that you're saying, then we're our own worst enemy. So now let's talk about step 3, becoming a rare listener. RARE is an acronym that I developed, and as you know, I'm a 7 Habits instructor. You mentioned that when we got in here today. So Stephen Covey talked a lot in Habit 5 about seek first to understand, then to be understood. There's a lot of other great books about becoming an effective listener. So what I've done is taken all the things I've learned in business, in sales, and in the books that I've read and the speakers that I've seen, and created this acronym. The first R, and by the way, this is going to be RARR. So R is squared, the second one, and then E. Okay. The first R is about repeat, right? And Chris Voss talks a lot about this in his book, Never Split the Difference, where repeat forces us to at least stop thinking about what we're going to say and truly focusing on the person that we're communicating with. So that's like a stoplight, right? And repeat is the first level of being an effective listener. It's not where we're going to end up, but at least forces us to stop thinking about what I'm going to say next, right?
Well, yeah, there's a difference between actually listening and waiting for your turn to talk. You know, that's what most people, when they're listening, they're actually got this robot in their head that's focusing on what I'm going to say next. They're not truly listening to anything.
I'm probably going to cut a few people to the core right now. I hear a lot of people say, oh, I just don't remember names. You know why you don't remember names? Because you don't care. I'm going to be honest with you. People say that all the time, and I really invest some time in our live events on this and our virtual training. But when you're not able to remember somebody's name, it was because you were thinking about what you were going to say when they shared their name. And we've all probably heard in sales that the person's name said properly is the sweetest sound on planet Earth,
like sweet music to their ears. Yeah.
Right. But how many times have we been at a party or a get-together or something, and we met somebody and we go, oh, gosh, what was their name? That's because we were thinking about us. We weren't thinking about them. So if somebody shares their name, normally they don't say their name and then go off on a whole rant. They'll turn around and ask you your name, or they'll say, where are you from, or something like that. And so if you weren't listening to the name, you can't repeat it, right? And there's a lot of other techniques that we teach in order to remember names, but the first thing is to truly care.
Yeah.
Now, in any
I like that you said repeating, though. Like, you know, when you're saying things out loud and you're repeating it, you're learning it like 3 different ways, right? Because you're thinking it, you're saying it, and you're hearing it. So it's going to help you retain that information a hell of a lot better.
So it's going to help you retain that information a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just repeated exactly what you said, right? Now, if I was thinking about what I was going to say next, there's no way I can do the same. We cannot multitask. The human race can't multitask. Females genetically are known to be able to switch back and forth between tasks more quickly. but we cannot multitask. We can do other things very fast. And so if I hit repeat, that means that I have to stop thinking about what I'm going to say and really focus on what you were saying. So in that moment, I'm just listening to what Dom's saying. Then very quickly, I can think about a response, right? When you stopped talking, but I wanted to be able to repeat the last sentence that you said. Then we're going to move in. That's the first level, and it just focuses us on not thinking about a response. A then is to start thinking not so much about the words that you're sharing with me, but the emotion behind them, right? So A is acknowledge the emotion or acknowledge the feeling, okay? That's going to be where I start to maybe guess a little bit. If you and I were in a very heated conversation, I might say, Dom, it sounds like you're frustrated, right? And you might say, I'm not frustrated, I am, and you might hit me with some dirty words or something like that, So if I felt like you were sharing a story about something that happened to you, your dog passed or something like that, I might say, it sounds like that was really unexpected and maybe hurtful. Right? I'm just going to search for a little bit of an emotion that I could plug in. That's acknowledging the emotion in the rare listening sequence. Then we come up on R squared. The first R there is where we're going to rephrase, okay? So if you were to say something to me, instead of repeating like the first R, I'm going to rephrase it into my own words. This is a much higher level of listening. It truly requires us, like Covey would say, habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. To truly understand somebody means I can interpret what you're saying, put it into my own words, and repeat that back to you in my own words. And then the other one is to relate. And I'm going to share something here today that I think could change the lives of some of the viewers, because this is one that I see happen in sales almost everywhere I go with every single salesperson every single time. In fact, it happens across the gamut with the whole entire human race. That is where we relate.
Yeah.
Relating is not saying I understand or I totally get it or it's the same way for me. We as humans want to be unique. And so the last thing we would ever want to do is say to another human being, I completely understand, because we don't. We're so different and we've grown up, we've had different experiences in life. Even if you're an identical twin, living in the same house, going to the same schools, in the same town, raised by the same parents, we are all uniquely different and we all have different emotions. So what I would say is in the relate phase, let's eliminate, and I do mean eliminate. I don't like to make a lot of hard and fast rules, but this is one that I'm really going to recommend to your listeners. Relate means saying something like, I've been in similar situations before, but I would never be able to say I can completely understand. You're actually going to change it. It's close, but it's the opposite, okay? I'm never going to be at a house and have a homeowner tell me or a prospect tell me they got to talk to their spouse, and I say, oh, I completely understand. It's the same way for me and my wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, because you know what? They're just going to look at you and go, oh, so you understand what my life and my wife is like, and you understand what I have in my bank account, and that I didn't even want to do this project in the first place, and it's all her, and she didn't want to be here because she doesn't like dealing with salespeople. You get all that? No. So what I'm going to say is, if you were to tell me at the end of a process, okay, Doug, sounds good. I like you. I like your company. I think you guys will do a great job in this project. A little more than I was expecting, but I think you'll do a nice job. Then I'm not going to say I understand. I'm going to say something like, Dom, every relationship is different. And while I do have a similar agreement with my spouse, I can't imagine what it's like for you. Now, in that one sentence, we allowed ourselves to keep sales resistance down, because at that moment, just like that friend of yours that was doing the deal word at the end, kind of like the deals won't last long, we're annihilating our opportunity to walk out of there with a sale when at the end we reveal ourselves to be who they thought we were all along. And that is, even as much as they enjoyed their time with us, if we get down to the end and start telling them they don't need to sleep on it, think about it, that it's the same for us, I completely understand, you don't need to pray about it, you don't need to, look into this or get 3 bids. If you start with that, then that homeowner is going to start arguing with us. So that's the relate. Rephrasing is changing their words into our own words, and that R is relating, which is completely different than I get it, I understand it, I completely understand, any version of that. Let's make a pact that we're never going to do that again. And then the last E is express, and this is what we're all really good at, expressing our own beliefs, our own opinions. With the E, though, I'm going to say let's toe into that conversation a little bit. We'll put all these together here in just a moment. The express is to say something like, Dom, if I'm hearing you correctly, I understand it as this. Now, in a sales situation, that might require us to do 30 seconds, might be 3 minutes to repeat all that back. Then I'm going to ask for a little bit of permission, especially if I'm in an argument with a child, with a spouse, or something like that. I'm going to say, if you feel like I've come to somewhat of an understanding of where you're coming from or how that made you feel when I didn't do that, didn't help with the dishes, whatever it might be, would it be okay if I shared my perspective? Now we're gathering their permission to toe into that conversation. And then what I would say is, if emotion goes up again, then what I'm going to immediately say is go right back into the repeat, acknowledge the emotion, rephrase, relate, because they weren't actually ready to hear from you. Okay? So RARE acronym, repeat, acknowledge the emotion or feeling, rephrase or relate, and then we toe into the express like we would toe into an ice bath, or I guess we just got to jump into that. We could toe into the ocean, right? Toe into the pool. And then we're ready to step back out, especially with prospects. Okay? So what I'm going to start doing there is if I repeat something back, I'm always going to be exchanging that with a rephrase. I never want to start sounding like a broken record because people will start to kind of come on to us and maybe feel us out and go, why do you keep repeating everything that I'm saying? So that's where we would then jump to a rephrase. If I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like for you, one of the biggest concerns on this project is not necessarily the initial investment, it's the total investment. And you're concerned also about the time it's going to require for us to schedule the installation because we're 6 months out, right? Maybe we're designing a backyard pool and deck area and all that, and to put together a $250,000 or $1 million backyard project, then we might identify that and say, and then if he was like, yeah, I wanted this done for this summer, not next, then I would acknowledge the emotion and say, Dom, it sounds like this is frustrating. You do want to move forward with the project with us. You feel like we'll provide the most value. Now I'm rephrasing or repeating what you said. However, you're a little bit frustrated that we might not be able to complete this project or even start on it until next spring. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to get more from you so that now I can address those concerns. By the way, I don't like to call them objections. We'll go back to wordsmith. I like to refer to those things as areas of concern. Anytime we continue to repeat, sounds like you have objections, that takes us to court, right? And now we're getting charged again. We're being arrested. And so I don't like to refer to anything at the end as an objection. I might say we'll address areas of concern, which are normal for people to have. And their job is to get the most for the least. Even if they want to use me and they think we're priced fairly, they're still going to pretend as though they'd like it at a discount.
Yeah, I love that your formula really gets to the emotional root origin of what's holding them back, because a lot of salespeople, they try to spend their time and energy focusing on the reflex response or the excuse, but not the true emotional root origin of what's holding them back, right? Exactly. So it's really built into your formula. And one thing I really like is the relate portion, because do you refer to this as pattern painting ever? Like, yeah, because
absolutely,
that's exactly what that is the homeowner has obviously a pattern that they formed throughout the many of interactions with terrible salespeople, and they're bracing for and preparing for the fact they're going to get an argument, they're going to get a sales rep, high pressure them, jump down their throat as soon as they object. That's right. And when you do the exact opposite of that, and to your description, breathe life into that objection, that is not remotely even close to what they imagine, what they fantasize would happen. And those types of strategies are magnetic in nature. They reel people in. Yeah. Like it's truly magic. You can see all of a sudden the objections dissolve away. And this is what I love about what you're teaching and preaching here is with the right strategy, a professional salesperson can literally close, not, I wouldn't say unlimited, but seemingly for hours. Like there is a point where everyone will hit a dead end, but you can close for long periods of time and actually continue to build on the trust and rapport.
Absolutely.
So a lot of salespeople, they do a good job building trust and rapport throughout the sales encounter, and as soon as the total investment's on the table, it's like, how quickly can I burn through this trust and rapport now? And they're shooting themselves in the foot really, really, really quickly with bad technique because they don't know the objection handling framework.
So if you were to tell me, I don't know, hit me with any objection, and I'll just show with in the rare listening sequence, this is the first thing that I do, and I think for all of the people watching and listening today, you'll start to notice an immediate lowering of sales resistance if we will start to do this at the end. So hit me with any objection. I'm going to show you how the rare listening sequence plays in here.
Yeah, it's just way more money than we ever planned for, and yeah, it just, I'm not sure we can afford it.
So that's the first thing I do. And I'm comfortable with silence. It sounds like this is a big decision. It's a little bit more than you were thinking.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe you're not quite ready to move forward.
Yeah, you could say that.
So Let's go back to rare. Now, what we did there is we lowered sales resistance, because what most untrained sales professionals, I don't even know if we can call them this, but what most of us as untrained sales people do is we're trained to immediately try to argue, overcome the objection, address that area of concern. I just say, if you're not having the success that you want to have, and you don't want to feel like every day you run a sales lead, your life is going to be a battle, and if you wake up hating your life and hating your profession and laying awake at night, dreading going to see prospects the next day, this is probably why. A lot of us that hit this rut, this is the moment that makes us hate our profession, and why guys like you and I still love it, and that we look out there across the audience and the people that we work with and our clients, and we say, it doesn't have to be this way. It is about ultimate preparedness. Everything that we do matters. Every detail matters. And so the number one thing that we can do here is leave enough time here. As I mentioned a minute ago, 20 minutes in the closing sequence after we ask for the order. Maybe it's 30 minutes, maybe it's an hour, depending on the project. But here's what I'm going to say. I'm not worried. I'm not getting thrown out of the house. I've been the ultimate professional from the time I did the call ahead to the time I showed up to the time I presented. Everything I did that I know that most of my competitors are not even dreaming of doing. I'm going to serve our customers better than they could have imagined being served. And when I get down to the end, I have earned their respect and I have earned their trust. Am I more than they expected? You're damn right. I want to be more, right? Because if I'm lower, then I cannot provide all of the service, the installation, the stand behind my product, and all that. And I can't take care of my family if I'm selling at cheap prices and discounting my profit and my margin's low, and the business can't take care of me as the salesperson either. Yeah. So I like it when I get down to the end, and I expect it, and I've got to be ready, and I've got to be energetic, and I've got to be working on my mind, and my health, my fitness, my spirituality, everything for this moment, and I've got to be prepared. And I am not about to say, okay, I'll email you. But what I am going to do is listen, and I'm going to imagine them drowning, because they are. Yeah. Because if you're working for a company like the ones we've been describing here, your price is more than they hoped. They still want to use us. I promise you, Dom, if you're in the home, if you're in a situation and you're the salesperson, they want you, they want your company, they want your product. But you know what they also want? They want you at a discount. Yeah. Because that's their job. Get the most for the least. So we've got to be programmed, and the better we are, and the more we are on the premium scale, the more they're going to want a discount. But it doesn't mean they don't want us. So I'm going to let them get a breath of air, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4, and I'm going to sit in this conversation. And I'm never going to say the words I understand. I'm going to show you the difference right here. If I say, it sounds like this is a little bit more than you'd expected, maybe a lot more. Yeah. And you had mentioned body language and how we do that. I'm going to lean in. It sounds like this is a little bit more than you expected. In fact, Dom, it might be a lot more than what you were thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, we were thinking we could get it for 10. So yeah, 20,000 is twice what we thought it was going to be.
So a lot more, twice as much. And then I'm going to repeat it again. So that was a rephrase. You were thinking 10,000 for the entire project, and we're at 20. Whew, that's a lot.
Yeah, and obviously, you guys are super high quality, and we didn't really know what was out there, but now we have a lot more information. So,
most of our customers in similar situations have found that true quality, as you mentioned. So I'm leveraging a little bit of a repeat and a rephrase that you just hit me with about the quality of it. Most of our customers in similar situations have shared with us that for true quality, they're not surprised that it's a little bit more, but they are caught off guard by how much more. The premium quality with a company that stands behind their work, that pulls the proper permits, that protects your family, that protects your property, that hires drug-tested and background-checked individuals, that truly wears this logo like a badge of honor. And I'd shared with you that Ted treats us like his very own family. Most of our customers are surprised as well. So now what I'm doing is I'm providing a little bit of social proof.
Yeah, you're not saying prospects, you're saying customers, meaning they hired you.
And I haven't asked you for the order yet again, right? I haven't asked you to trust me again. We're just now having a conversation. This is why I say, if we get in the habit of talking about money and people's projects, like, can I have a glass of water, please? When we get so comfortable, even if we do have to fake it a little in the beginning, and we really have to work on our mindset, and we think about this stuff, now when we get to the end, we're sitting in it. I'm not like, okay, well, nervous and let me email you and make sure I got your email right and we'll send you a bid tomorrow. When can I get that to you? No, I'm just sitting back. Now I'm going to be a better human being. If my grandmother was concerned about the price, now I would talk to my grandmother about her Social Security, about her retirement. Let's just say that grandma wants a pool. I don't know. Maybe grandma wants new wood floors. Maybe she's only going to be in this house for a year before she goes off to the nursing home. Maybe she's been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I don't know. These are real life situations, and we've got to get out of the habit of thinking that people aren't going through a lot. And so what I say is, if you want to be a true professional, if you want to raise your game higher than you've ever raised it before, my best advice is to see people and to truly try to understand. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. And if I'm just trying to close you right now because I want that commission, they're going to sense it. It's not authentic. So what I'm going to do in the end is I'm going to sit in this for the long haul. And so now let's pretend you're my grandmother. And I could convince myself that, well, Grandma, you don't want to spend, $250,000 on a pool if you're planning on going to a nursing home in a year. Or if you have stage 4 cancer. These are real life situations. But I hopefully would have uncovered that during my sales process by effective questioning, which I called gathering their opinion. Nobody wants to be questioned like they're going to go to jail and be charged with a crime. So another thing I would do here, Dom, is during the process, I would try to uncover those things. What is it that's having you look at a pool right now or wood floors or whatever? And she might say, well, Douglas, I've never had nice wood floors and this old dingy carpet, and I know I'm not going to get the life out of them and I won't be here that long. But darn it, I've always wanted wood floors. Well, you know what I just heard is the wood floors are more important to her than the money in the bank when she dies.
Yeah.
So now what I'm going to do is through a point of empathy, not trying to take advantage of her. Is there a benefit to me if I earn a commission? Of course. That's why we got up and went to work today. Mm-hmm. But my real job is to see people and seek first to understand. So at the end here, I'm just going to say, now if you're my grandmother, my grandfather, I'm going to say, so it's a lot more than you were thinking. And you're not quite sure if this is the right decision, maybe if it's financially responsible. And you've worked your entire life to have a little bit of money in the bank to leave to your loved ones. Let me ask you this. If you were to look up a year from now, as you moved out of this home and you hadn't invested in the floors, would you perhaps have some regret?
Yeah, something I've been really wanting to do for quite some time, and it certainly would make everything a lot more enjoyable around here. But yeah, I think I would have some regrets. Yeah.
Now what I've done is I'm funneling because I'm not immediately attacking that I'm twice as much, the $10,000 difference. What I did now is I uncovered another emotion. Regret is an emotion, and if you study anything, and again, today we said we were going to have a very honest conversation, but we had to start with the grandmother rule, which was not going to lie, cheat, or steal, or manipulate, but our job is to influence. People make these type of decisions based on emotion. And if I get down to the end and just talk dollars and cents, the only emotion there is fear, and I shouldn't spend that, and what if it's too much, and what if I didn't get the most for the least? But people buy on emotion. And so I'm not trying to manipulate my own grandmother. I'm just saying, well, Grandma, it's your money. If you're worried about leaving some of that behind for me and Chris and, the rest of the cousins, don't worry about us. This is you and your life. You've worked hard for this money. You've sacrificed. You've saved. Right? I'm also going to breathe life into that emotion. So anyway, this might be a rare situation, but my point here is what I did not say. Imagine that Grandma is 92 years old. Grandpa is 92 years old. And I say, yeah, well, I completely understand. I'm 49 years old. Do you think a 92-year-old grandmother who lived through the Great Depression at this point would say, oh, so you understand? You know what it's like to be me at 92 with a year to live, right? And everybody's telling me they want this or they want my house or who gets the car. You know what that's like? So I'm never going to say that. I'm going to say something like this. If I was to relate, I'd say, I can't even imagine what that's like to be you in your situation. But I would think that if I was in that situation, I wouldn't want to have any regrets at the end. I don't know. Those watching us today, if they just pick up on this, they'd say, oh my gosh, you would take advantage of a 92-year-old grandmother. That's the farthest thing from what you and I are talking about here today, Dom. It's about being a true professional, and I'm never going to call it only. I'm never going to say it's only $10,000. Now, there's many other things that we can leverage here in the world of sales and technique where, Tom Hopkins has been teaching stuff for 3 or 4 decades now out of how to master the art of selling. Dollarize the value, reduce to the ridiculous. If let's say that we're talking about a floor that could last 20 years, right? Then I'm just going to divide out that new wood floor project over 20 years. And if we're $10,000 more on a $20,000 solution, I would dollarize the value, reduce to the ridiculous, and we could keep going further and further, but I would probably start here. I would say, Dom, you'd mentioned the quality that you get with our company and the way we stand behind our work. And I shared with you the kind of men and women that we are here at ABC, and that I wouldn't work for a company that would come in and take advantage of people or leave them in a lurch. Over the life of these floors, when installed properly with premium materials, as I've recommended here today for you and your family, that $10,000 difference over 20 years works out to be about $10 a week. Do you think that having contractors on your property that you can trust, that are fully licensed and insured, that are drug tested and background checked, that are all going to be wearing their badges, they're going to wear their uniforms and show up as contractors looking like $1 million, that you don't have to worry about somebody lifting something off of one of your nightstands, that you don't have to keep an eye on, and that, goodness gracious, if something ever went wrong with your job, that you wouldn't have to threaten the BBB or the Call for Action news segment or something like that. Do you think that all that combined might be worth $10 a week? The cost of a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
Yeah, less than that nowadays. It's crazy.
Depends on if you get the iced coffee, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'd say so.
I'll tell you what, Tom. Why don't we go ahead and take care of the paperwork? Let's get this set up for installation. And if everything doesn't happen exactly as I've promised you that it will, we'll do whatever it takes to make things right. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Now, in this situation, we only asked for the order once or twice. But how long did it take me? I like to say, imagine that you got a mountain in front of you. We're going to circle the wagon all the way around the mountain. I'm not in a hurry to ask you for the order again. The less time that goes by and the faster I rush into trying to close this sale again once there's been a concern identified, the less likely we are to close, and the more we feel like a high-pressure, pushy salesperson. The more we say words like only, contract, price, cost, fee, charge, spend, pay, payments, the monthly payment, the down payment, all those things. I'm going to change those to the monthly investment, as you mentioned, the initial investment, the total investment. I'm going to talk about when you invest in your family, when you make an investment such as this. I'm going to refer back to all those things. I'm never going to ask if you have a problem. I see salespeople do this all the time. They get down to the end and the person has an objection or an area of concern, and we say, it sounds like you have a problem with me. Sounds like you have a problem with my company. You got a problem with what I've recommended. Those are fighting words. And Dom, can you imagine being in a home with a female and saying this? Sounds like you've got issues.
What?
You got issues with my product? You got issues with my price? Like, don't ever say to a woman she's got issues, and don't ever say to a man you got a problem with anything. We're going to say it sounds like you have some areas of concern. Let's chat.
I'm not even kidding. I'm obviously not going to name any names, but I went through a sales training with another trainer in the industry, and they were getting an objection, and the guy was responding to the objection, the trainer, saying, well, you told me this is what you wanted before. Were you lying? I'm like, what the? I'm like, earmuffs, everybody, never in a million years call the customer a liar. It's unbelievable.
May I go back to the wordsmith for a moment?
Yeah.
I hear these things all the time. So again, I mentioned hundreds of these words. Problem and issue are one of them. Change those to challenges. From the time we were little children, we were raised to believe that there is value in overcoming life's challenges. There's value in overcoming challenges. But where I'm also from, and much like you in Farmington, asking somebody, you got a problem? Those are probably fighting words. We're going to up out behind the woodshed, right? You never ask a person or tell them they have issues, right? We've uncovered some challenges. I'd like to get your opinion on some things. Never say, I'd like to ask you a few questions. That's like the FBI interrogating you, right? And then you get down to the end and you said, well, earlier you told me that, right? And what was the second part of that?
You told me this is what you wanted. Were you lying?
Were you lying, right? So now I'm never going to say the words tell, talk to, right? I'm going to change those out to the word share. Why? Because I was raised in the Baptist home and we were taught to share our testimony for Christ. We were also taught that if little Johnny's over there taking everybody's toys, even if you were waiting patiently, you share, right? Sharing's caring. So what I'm going to start doing is replacing the word talk with chat. It's a lot lighter. It's a lot more airy. And I'm never going to say, I'm going to tell you what you need to know. None of us want to be needy either. I'm just hitting about another 10 of them right here. I'm going to say things like this. I'm going to say, sounds like you have Sounds like you have some concerns. Earlier, when we were chatting, you had shared with me that one of the things you were most interested in was, boom, plug in the blank, right? Instead of saying, earlier you told me that you wanted this or whatever. So, and then I'm going to say, here, what we're going to do, especially if I was early on in qualifying time at the beginning of an appointment. By the way, I'm never going to call it an appointment. I'm going to call it a visit. We're going to visit with our friends and family. We're going to schedule appointments with people we don't like the dentist, the doctor, the lawyer, the CPA. So I'm never going to schedule an appointment anymore with our potential customers. We visit with those people. We're going to sit down and chat. We're going to visit. Earlier we were visiting and you had shared with me, not told me, earlier you'd shared with me that one of the things that was most important to you was plug in whatever it was, right? I'm never going to say earlier, were you lying? I'm going to say now it seems like you're not quite so sure. I'm going to slow my cadence down, so I really want them to listen. That is essentially saying the same thing as the guy saying, oh, you told me earlier this, were you lying? Mm-hmm. Except that is horrific. Yeah. What we're going to do is rephrase that into our wordsmithing, right? With our cadence through the EKG method. And the body language, I'm going to say, earlier had shared with me when we were visiting that this was something that was really important to you. Now, as we've maybe talked about the investment that will be required to make all of this happen, maybe you're not quite so sure. Am I hearing you correctly? Now I've breathed life into the objection. And now I haven't raised sales resistance. I've kept that low. And I'm giving myself a chance to close this sale, right? To earn this business is really the wordsmith there. To earn their business, earn their trust, and move forward with this project while there. Get the paperwork, not the contract. I'm not going to ask them to sign. I'm going to get the John Hancock. I'm going to ask to get their initials. We're going to get the paperwork taken care of. We're never going to execute anything. I mean, imagine what subconsciously that draws up, right? People are scared of contracts. They're afraid to sign anything. So anyway, a lot of those things working together. And then each time, I'm going to bring in social proof at the end. Most of our customers in similar situations. You know, I know that your home is different than any other home that I've been in, but it is similar in one situation that I'm thinking about. A couple of months ago, I was over on the other side of town off of such and such street, and the Jones family over there had some similar concerns about the molding and then the way that the steps were going to go down. And then once we started doing all that, I'm going to bring that up. I'm going to say, you know, in that situation, here's what we did. And what I've done is I've taken the spotlight off of you and me, and I'm talking about a third party, and now the pressure's low and they can actually listen. And I'm in what I call third person sentence structure, where I'm not saying you should do this or it's only this or I think you should. I'm going to be the authority and still likable by sharing with them what other people in not the same situation but similar have done to solve those same similar type of challenges.
You're in storytelling mode too, which really targets the emotional center of their mind, and also is the best way to hold the listener's attention too. So you're accomplishing a lot of things with that. But just like if we summarize this whole thing, the big takeaway that I'm getting, because I see a lot of salespeople that turn into Rambo in the close, right? I call them machine gun closers. As soon as price on tables, like close after close after close. Like their patience goes out the window, and the big message that I'm getting from you is fasten your seatbelt, enjoy the ride, sit back, relax, and get ready to settle into this closing sequence and be patient with the close, because people need to say no so many times before you get a yes. I think I saw a recent study is 82% of consumers have to say no at least 4 times before they say yes. Yeah. Whereas most salespeople give up after 1 or 2 objections, after 1 or 2 reflex responses, stalls, smoke screens for uncertainty, whatever you want to call them, right?
I met a couple of years ago, and I'm sure you probably read the same book. Many of our viewers have as well, Go for No by Richard Fenton and Andrea Waltz. And they did years and years of study on this, right? And they talk about, you know, the number of sales that are made from 2%, you know, on the first time, 3% on the second. And then as you mentioned, some of those other statistics, most sales aren't closed until the 5th to 12th time. Right. What I believe is if you serve your customers incredibly well, you show them respect, you show up ultimately prepared the way we look, act, smell, think, talk, that we also know our product, right? We're great on product knowledge. We're also great on effective communication. When we get down to the end, some of us watching today might say there's no way a homeowner or a customer or a potential customer or this commercial client would listen to all this nonsense. Well, what I would say is, you know, the funniest thing, when I was younger, go and do ride-alongs with different salespeople in different industries, the first thing that they would say when we'd go back to get in the truck after we closed a sale, they would say, well, we got lucky there. People just don't act like that.
That was an easy one.
That was an easy one. That's not the way people usually act. And then we'd go to another one, right? And similar things. And I'm not saying we're going to close them all, right? Because not everybody's going to be willing to pay us our premium price or make that investment. But what it'd say is when you learn to be the ultimate master of effective communication, and I'm still working on it every single day, people will stop treating you the way that they were treating the high-pressure, pushy salesperson that was not authentic, that was not presenting in an authentic way. And all of a sudden, we'll start inviting new conversations into our lives. People can feel when we're pressing at the end, when the money is now on the line and we're asking for the order and it's time for them to tell us they got to talk to somebody, get other bids, price is too high. When we immediately don't circle the wagon and strap your seatbelt in, as you mentioned, man, I'm going to be like, I'm imagining that I got like, I don't know, concrete shoes on or something stuck in quicksand where I can't leave at least 20 to 30 minutes and talk through this. That's going to be my opportunity to really have an opportunity to understand if I don't get this sale, what was it, right? Truly at the end, I've got to have all these conversations at the end. And I don't want to schedule any follow-ups. You had mentioned something about this earlier before, Dom. If we have to follow up with people, number one, our closing rate's probably going to drastically drop. We also can only see half as many people because we've got to see everybody twice. We've got to make all those phone calls. And that's one of the other things that's miserable in the sales profession is the chasing after we've already presented. So when I get down to the end, I feel like I've got to have earned the right to ask for their trust at the end, created the emotions that they'd want to buy from me, delivered a presentation that entertained and engaged, that sold the value of my organization, that clearly defined why our premium price is the premium price. I'm going to make no bones about that. I'm not going to apologize for it. And then I'm going to get down to the end and we're going to talk through all these things, the spouse objections, the unavailable party versus the available party, talking about the bids and the brand and the stalls. All those things, I got to sit there 20, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever it takes, but never high pressure or pushy. Sit in that, give them psychological air. And every single time you start to feel emotions start to get high in a bad way, then we're going to back off. It sounds like you're a little bit frustrated, you know. If somebody ever said, by the way, here's one where a lot of people say very early on in their career when they're trying to ask for the order those 4 or 5 times as you illustrated there, I would say if somebody ever says, well, Dom, now it seems like you're trying to pressure me. I'm going to say, oh my gosh, I'm going to repeat or rephrase it. It sounds like I may have frustrated you and you feel like I'm maybe overstepping my bounds and pressuring you. Is that right? See, instead of using whatever my scripted technique is here, I'm first going to repeat, rephrase, acknowledge the emotion. I did all of that right there. Then when you go, yeah, Doug, you told me you were blah, 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 and now you won't leave. And then I'm going to use one of the things, and there's all different ones, a little bit of alliteration here. I'm going to say, please do not perceive my passion and my enthusiasm for our company or the way that we take care of our customers for pressure. I apologize if I maybe came across that way or you perceive me to be that way, but I know what it's like out there in the world of contractors, Dom. And the last thing I want you to do is make a decision for a project in your home where there's gas and electricity, where there's CO poisoning, where water, where your family is at stake with strangers coming into your home with torches and tin snips and hammers and sledgehammers and backhoes and whatever the project is, right? I'm going to identify all the scary things about our trade and the things that we've seen. I'm going to say, but please do not mistake my passion for me just being here to high pressure you. Yeah. I don't want to see you make the wrong decision. Not on a project like this. Mm-hmm. And so that's where, a lot of times here in the beginning of this podcast, Dom, I was at least talking really fast and probably loud. I would never present like that with a prospect.
Yeah, we often had a rebuttal in bath sales because we'd share a lot of stories where, I literally go up to our customer's house and it's very common when they open the door for the first time that they've already suffered a catastrophic injury. So, and I shared a story, I had this lady that she literally opened the door. I don't even know how she opened the door, but both of her arms were in a cast and she had the big braces. She was like this. I'm like, oh my goodness, what happened? And she shared the story that she fell out of her bathtub, trying to get out, and she went to brace her fall, and she shattered and fractured both of her arms in multiple places, and then she was stuck on the floor. Well, thankfully, she had a scare doing something similar that wasn't as severe, and she had her dog trained that in the event of a fall, the dog would bring a phone to her so she could call her son to come take her to the hospital. Otherwise, she would have been, who knows how long, she would have been stuck there, right? So the reason why I shared this story is, this is where you get back in. Sometimes I get passionate about what I do because I don't want to be the guy to come back out here and do this when you need to have it done.
I love that.
I found that being proactive is in that case a lot less costly, a lot less painful. That's why I'm really passionate about this. So forgive me if I came out as being overly aggressive or pressure, but it's something I'm really passionate about because I really care about solving this.
I love that, Tom.
Yeah. So
and you know what I can tell when you did that, you have probably said that line, those words, thousands of times in your career, but it came across as authentic. You knew the words that you were going to share. You slowed the process down and communicated with authenticity to say that. Now, that goes to ultimate preparedness. We've got to think about the words that we're going to share and the way in which we're going to share them, the cadence, the tone, the speed, all those things. But you were able to share those and it came across as authentic because it is. Because I can truly feel that vibrational state that you care about people.
Well, and here's one thing, a story that happened to me, and this is why I was genuine and actually cared. So I actually had this lady, she was probably 85 years old, just a sweetheart. And one of my secret weapons, not that it's a weapon, but when I went into a house, I had an old widow or an elderly lady, my grandma, and they had a piano. A lot of them had pianos in their house. Now I play the piano a little bit, dabble in the ivories. I would always play them music. I'd be like, oh my God, I don't have a piano at home. I absolutely love playing it. Please, can I play you a couple songs? And it would just be the ultimate icebreaker, and immediately she'd be loving me, wanting to adopt me. So that was one of the things. So I'm in this house for hours, and she moves forward with a walk-in shower because she was really having a difficult time getting in and out of her tub. And she had been putting this off, and her family told her no, but she decided to do it for her because she wanted to live independently, gracefully for the rest of her life in her home. And I'm not even kidding. The day after she signed the contract, this is the heartbreaking story and why I meant it when I said what I said.
Okay.
The day after she moved forward with the project, she fell out of her bathtub, broke her hip, broke her leg, and her children made the decision to put her in a nursing home. So then we had to cancel everything out. She never got the opportunity to live gracefully in her home because, again, she was one of those people that waited until she needed it, right?
See, Dom, this is real life. These are real situations. One of the things I'm not a big believer in is just trying to instill fear in people to help them make decisions. I don't want to be in fear-based selling. But emotions are the way that things are done with sales, especially when price is at a premium, right? It becomes not a price decision. It becomes the premium is chosen because of the emotion that they have, right? And so here's what I would say. If we're good people and we uncover the real challenges and the fears that somebody has, and we get down to the end and we make our case at the end and ask for the order and ask for that trust when we've earned trust and lowered risk, they're going to know by that time if we're good people, right? They're going to sniff that out if we're a snake in the grass. So what I heard you there leverage, and I'm glad that you brought that up because we may have ended this podcast without mentioning this. I'm going to beg our audience not to build what I call false rapport, and that is stepping into a home, and let's say that you're over there to sell windows, right? And you step in the entryway and you go, oh my gosh, look at these wood floors, and wow, a rock wall, and you say, oh, the motorcycle and the fish, and oh, you have a child in the military.
I use these examples. So you see bowling trophies. Are you a bowler? And the prospect's like, no, I just collect bowling trophies, you dumbass.
Right. And it's like, what are you doing, casing my house? If a guy comes over to sell me windows, I want to know about his expertise in windows and everything I needed about windows. If I wanted somebody to compliment me on my rock walls or my wood floors, I'll call my mom. She can come over and tell me what a beautiful job we've done on our remodel, right? I don't need that from my window salesperson, right? So I'm going to encourage you to generate rapport in very authentic ways. Now, when you see a piano, imagine if you said, oh my gosh, a baby grand piano, that's amazing, but that you don't play and you don't know anything about pianos, you just did that to build false rapport, and they go, oh, do you play, Dom? And you go, no. Well, what do you know about the 1962 baby grand or whatever? And you're like, you've never played a piano key in your life, right? You're done on that sales lead because they know you tried to build false rapport. So here's what I would say.
I even had one where I was at a church and they were replacing all their windows and they had the sound system, and I had a ride along with me at the time too, and the sales rep's like, what the hell is Dominic doing? I'm up literally on stage playing the piano at church. ended up being a phenomenal customer of ours. But yeah.
I love it. And you know what? The piano thing was building a sense of unity and community with you and that individual person. It's not like every sales lead you're going to talk about.
Vibration too, yeah.
Right. And it's not like on these other sales leads you're always talking about, I play the piano, I used to play as a kid. But you did it in that moment because that was authentic, that was true, and you shared commonality with that person. Cialdini, in his books, Influence and Persuasion, talk about that as one of the 7 principles of persuasion, as that is about building unity and community, right? We're very similar, if we're not the same, that we both love the piano when we play there, right? So that is, by the way, number 5, because we started with the ground rules, the grandmother rule, our mindset, how do we get ready every single day, just like a bodybuilder's got to lift all the time to not atrophy, right? Then we moved into the wordsmith. The words that we choose to share matter, and there's hundreds and hundreds of those. Then we move into the rare listening sequence, where we become more effective listeners. We stop trying to hard close people, and we seek first to understand, and we really start to show empathy to people. Then we move into those transition and generalization statements so that we don't rise the resistance at the end. We displace that type of aggression or that resistance by using social proof and saying most of our customers in similar situations, generally, typically in many situations, and then you plug that in and you never say, I had the exact same situation over on Main Street. You say, every situation's different, but I was working with a family over on Main that had a similar situation with their backyard and a slope, and they wanted to put in a great pool, whatever it might be, right? So that's step 4. The transition and generalization statements, keep resistance down. Then we move into 5, which is the 7 principles of persuasion. I would highly recommend we all start to really study and think about those. Now, you can dive even deeper beyond those 7 and say those are the umbrellas. But if we just go in those 7, what I do with every script, every presentation that I've ever taught or created, I'm trying to leverage in every sentence that I share at least 2 or 3 or 4 of those, right? In every sentence. Yeah. And that's why I believe that scripts are so important, right? Not to put us in a straitjacket and sound like we're scripted. Zig Ziglar said, every word out of a salesperson's mouth should be scripted, but never should one word sound as though it is. So I'm not talking about sounding scripted. I'm talking about knowing your content and your product so well and your effective communication, ways that you're doing that so well that it never sounds scripted. So you were talking right there about sense of unity and community, and then we've got things like reciprocity and consistency and social proof and likability, right? As we build those things, then we want to say, okay, why am I saying what I'm saying? Why am I sharing what I'm sharing? And then the last one, and I've heard some of your stuff, man, it's absolutely brilliant. We've got to talk about body language and presentation and tone and cadence and all those things. At Synergy, that's what we talk about as far as the EKG method of performance, whether we're speaking fast or slow, right? Low or high. You may have noticed earlier when I said, I asked for the order, came back, and I said, and if everything doesn't happen exactly as I've promised you that it will, we will move heaven and earth to make things right. Yeah. And then I said, well, why don't we go pick out an installation date? And then I went up. I said, fair enough. And so a little bit of body language, a little bit of high voice right there.
I think Jordan Belfort calls it like the reasonable man tone.
Yeah.
It just sounds extremely reasonable, right?
Sounds extremely reasonable. So all of those things, and here's what I will say also, for those that aren't believers in scripts, I believe that scripts are about ultimate preparedness so that there's never a situation where we're searching for the right words and then all of a sudden the wrong words or the dirty words come out on accident. That's not being ultimately prepared, right? And so what I say is when we get down to the end with that EKG level performance, if we get so good at our presentation that we no longer even have to think about what we're going to say, we're only thinking about how we're going to say it, when we're going to say it, right? The tone in which we say it, the cadence and all those things. That is the mark of a true influencer, of a true professional salesperson when you've mastered that craft, right? And so I just think that sales truly is an honorable profession, Dom. The thing that probably it really bothers me and quite frankly sometimes disgusts me is that people will say, oh, I'm a salesperson or I'm a professional salesperson, but then they've not taken the time to master this. They're showing up with a hangover. They've not been managing the other parts of their life. They're not truly seeking to understand, and they're just out there trying to hard close people, trying to earn a commission. That's not true professional sales. I believe that sales can be an honorable profession just like a brain surgeon or, you name the profession, whatever you think the most honorable profession is that helps society today. I think that sales can be the same thing. We get a bad rap because so many people haven't taken the time or invested the time to become a true master of effective communication, listening, presenting, all those things. I think that's where the real fault lies. because you don't have to be a cheap price if you master everything else. Doesn't mean you're going to them all, but you can get somewhere in that 50, 60, 70% close rate being the premium price in your entire town.
I agree 100%, and obviously amazing content, and Lord knows we could literally talk for days about sales. And
I would love to.
I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your ideas, your wisdom, your experiences. And again, anybody watching this, hopefully you took a lot. You probably got a whole book full of notes right now. But if people want to learn more about Doug Wyatt and Synergy Learning System, what's the best way to contact you?
Well, first thing I'll say is that there's another company out there, Synergy Learning Systems, that also teaches leadership training. I'm a 7 Habits instructor, as you mentioned in the intro. They're not willing to give up the URL, but they do leadership training. So they're .com, we're .net. So if you're looking for Doug, if you're looking for Synergy Learning Systems, please look at a .net. You'll find us on the web. There's so many videos there and what I call in front
When you go to
curtain.
synergy.net, all your sales moving forward will be nothing but net.
I love that. I'm going to write that down.
I just came up with it.
So it's synergylearningsystems.net, and then there's all kinds of videos. We talk about our sales strategy, our philosophy. There's also a book out there that's great in the trade. It's called They Ask You Answer by a guy named Marcus Sheridan. We abide by that, where we put our pricing out there, the investment options on our website. We have a virtual training system because sometimes people's schedules don't match up to come to one of our regional events around the country. So all of our stuff we've put online, from call center training to technician training, sales training, leadership training. All of those overviews are on there, highly produced videos. We have 11 video editors around the world.
Yeah, I've seen your content. It is the highest quality content I think I've seen in the industry, so it's very well done.
By the way, I have lost track of how long we've been on here, Dom, but even with an edit, my guess is it's going to be a longer podcast. Here's what I'd like to offer all of your viewers. We invested a lot of time today talking about the wordsmith. If you go to synergylearningsystems.net, you will see on the Contact Us form, right, when you get in touch with us, if you hit that drop down, you're going to see Grosso University, Profits for Sanity. If you select that you watched us here with Dom, then I'm going to say to your listening audience, we're going to provide absolutely free of charge a 10-video training set, all virtual, okay? And you're going to get to go through our entire Wordsmith training program, absolutely free, because we so appreciate you having us here into the great state of Wisconsin and having us here
and
at Grosso University.
And as we discussed, that training alone can literally transform someone's sales performance. All those things make such a profound difference. So we definitely appreciate you offering that.
Absolutely.
And again, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom. So what an action-packed episode. I guess it's kind of hard to top that. Maybe we'll have to turn that into 2 episodes. We'll see how it shakes out. But I think we're just going to do a marathon one, make you guys, have pages of notes by the end of it. So again, episode 12 of our Profits for Sanity podcast with none other than Doug Wyatt. And I'm going to have Doug finish the sentence, unfinished statement. As always, volume is for vanity and profit is for
sanity.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next one.